A town put 60 lots on the market. Asking price, $500 each. They still had to wait for takers. You'd think land that cheap would sell itself. But in this part of Texas, the price stopped being the problem a long time ago. The buyers left, and the houses stayed. Texas gets written up as the state everyone is moving to. Cranes over Austin, subdivisions eating ranch land outside every major city. That story is real. This one is also real. Drive far enough past the interstate exits and you find the other Texas. Porch lights gone out, one house at a time, for sale signs so faded the phone number is unreadable because no one has called in years. That is the Texas this channel covers. If you want the brochure version, you are in the wrong place. Subscribe and let's get into the count. One more thing before we do. A town is coming up in the top half of this list that lost more than a quarter of its people, not from economics, not from oil, but from a single morning in 1965. And number 1, the town where we close. Nearly 1 house in 3 sits dark right now. That is not a metaphor. That is the census number. Number 12, Colorado City. Start here because it gives you the slowest version of what this list is about, and slow is its own kind of honest. Colorado City is the Mitchell County seat, right on Interstate 20, about 68 miles west of Abilene, halfway between nowhere and the Permian Basin money that has never quite found its way back here. The 2020 census counted 3,991 people. That was down 143 residents from 2010, roughly 3.5%, and that followed another decline the decade before. 3 straight decades of falling. The old downtown along Oak Street was built for a population that has been quietly draining toward the cities for a generation. Gypsum plants and oilfield service work still keep some paychecks coming, but every business that closes is one more family that lists a house and waits. Not for the right offer, for any offer. Picture this. You put a house on the market in Colorado City. The price is fair, genuinely fair, lower than almost anything you would find near a city. And you wait. A week becomes a month. The storefronts you can see from the window keep going dark one by one. That is not a horror story. It is a slow-motion fact about what happens when the line of buyers behind you thins until it disappears. 3.5% per decade sounds gentle. It is gentle. That is what makes it tricky, because the town does not look abandoned. It looks merely tired. But tired and shrinking in a small market means cheap only matters if you ever intend to sell again. The problem is not the price. The problem is the line behind you is empty. Number 11, Munday. 60 miles northwest of Abilene in Knox County, out on the rolling plains where cotton and wheat still get farmed, but now with a fraction of the old workforce. The town counted 1,246 people in 2020, down from a peak of 1,524 in 2000. Nearly a fifth gone over 2 decades, and still ticking downward. Knox County as a whole holds barely 3,300 people. This is the arithmetic of farm consolidation. The machines do more, the hands required to run them get fewer, and the young people do the rational thing, which is leave for Wichita Falls or Abilene where the jobs are. The school runs leaner. The grain elevator runs leaner. The houses that once passed between farming families sit because there is no next family moving in to take them. The decline here is gentle by the standards of what comes later on this list. Munday is thinning, not dying. And that distinction matters to the people still there. But it is a meaningful distinction only if you plan to stay. If you ever need to sell, the math turns on you fast. A house priced like a used truck is still a house you will struggle to hand off in a county that is still losing people. Not a ghost town, not yet. But the math is patient. Number 10, Stamford. 40 miles north of Abilene, straddling the Jones and Haskell County line. A rail and ranching town that the census has watched contract for as long as anyone has been counting. The 2020 number came in at 2,907, down 7, 5% from 2010. That sat on top of a 12.5% loss the decade before. 2 straight decades of steep decline in a small market is the kind of trend you can read on the streets without looking at a single data point. Wide residential blocks where every 3rd or 4th property is vacant or holds a house no one lives in. The old cotton and cattle economy that justified all this housing has mechanized and centralized, and the payroll that once kept Stamford full moved on and did not come back. Here is the part that trips people up. Stamford still has a hospital, still has a working main street. On a drive-through, it reads as stable. And it is, in the narrow sense that it is not collapsing. But stable and shrinking is exactly how a town accumulates empty houses. One funeral and one U-Haul at a time, and there is no mechanism in Stamford's current economy to bring those houses back into use. Stable is not the same as safe. Not when stable means one less neighbor every year. Number 9, Ranger. The name means something to anyone who knows Texas oil history, and the oil history is the whole story. Ranger sits off Interstate 20 in Eastland County, about 90 miles west of Fort Worth. In 1917, a single gusher turned it into a boomtown of an estimated 30,000 people practically overnight. By the 1930 census, the bust had already pulled it down to 6,208. The 2020 census found about 2,300 people remaining, and the direction remains down. Ranger has been shrinking for a full century. 100 years of decline leaves marks you cannot miss. Grand old brick buildings sitting vacant downtown, residential streets with literal gaps where homes were lost and never replaced. The town was built for 10 times its current size, and everything that was built for the crowd is still there, except the crowd. What Ranger offers a buyer today is genuine bargains, because a century of outmigration priced in the emptiness long ago. A patient person could find real value. But value and a functioning market are not the same thing. Ranger had its moment. The moment was 1917. Everything since has been subtraction. Number 8, Breckenridge. The Stephens County seat, about 100 miles west of Fort Worth. The story rhymes with Ranger so precisely it almost sounds like a formula, except that both towns are real and the formula is just what oil booms do. The 1918 strike swelled Breckenridge to a peak of roughly 30,000 by 1921. Within a few years, production slowed and the crowds dissolved, leaving 7,569 by 1930. The modern town has kept sliding, down almost 10% from 2010 to 2020, with recent estimates landing near 5,140, the lowest the town has been in the census era. That leaves a courthouse square and a housing stock built for a city that is no longer there. Oil and hunting leases bring a trickle of money, but nothing close to what would fill the homes the boom constructed. Breckenridge is large enough to still function. Schools, a lake nearby, basic services. That size is part of the catch. It reads like a real town because it is a real town, just one that has been setting new population lows at each census for decades. Every year there are more homes than households. Every year the gap widens slightly. The boom built more than the bust could ever take back, and Breckenridge has been living inside that arithmetic ever since. Number 7, Littlefield. Lamb County, 35 miles northwest of Lubbock. This one comes with a specific number that should stop you. The town borrowed roughly $11 million in bonds to build the Bill Clayton Detention Center, betting a private prison would deliver jobs and steady revenue. When the operator pulled out around 2009, after riots, a suicide, and an escape, the prison sat empty. The town was left carrying approximately $9 million in debt at $65,000 a month for a building it could not sell. It stood largely vacant for years. It finally sold in 2021. For the better part of a decade before that, every single person in Littlefield absorbed that monthly bill in some form. Services cut, budgets strained, a hulking empty facility visible on the edge of town as a daily reminder of a bet that did not pay. The town itself was shrinking during all of this, down about 7% between 2010 and 2020, and estimates since have continued falling. Littlefield is a functioning county town with agriculture behind it. It is not in free fall. But a community that spent 10 years paying for an empty, unsellable building knows exactly what unwanted property feels like from the inside. They built it. They paid for it. Nobody wanted it. You have seen what a failed bet looks like. Up next, a place that lost more than a quarter of its people, and a single morning in 1965 is where the story turns. Number 6, Quanah. Hard by the Red River and the Oklahoma line in Hardeman County, roughly 200 miles northwest of Fort Worth. Named for the last Comanche chief, Quanah Parker. The town that carries his name has been emptying at a rate that the name deserves better than. The 2020 census found 2,279 residents, down 13, 9% from 2010, and down nearly 26% from the 2000 peak of just over 3,000. Hardeman County as a whole holds only about 3,500 people. Quanah was a railroad and ranching hub, and when the rail work and the farm jobs thinned, there was no second act waiting in the wings. The main street runs more shuttered frontage than open doors. The neighborhoods have empty houses, not as exceptions, but as fixtures, as ordinary as a stop sign. In a county of 3,500 people, the numbers swing hard. A single business closing or a single good agricultural season moves the percentage. That can make the volatility look like noise. It is not noise. A quarter of the population gone in 20 years is a town emptying out in slow motion, measured in people and front doors and lights that stopped coming on. Named for a chief who never surrendered. The town did not either, but the people kept leaving anyway. Number 5, Electra, Wichita County, 25 miles northwest of Wichita Falls. The town still calls itself the pump jack capital of Texas, and it is not wrong. The pump jacks are still there. The people are the problem. The 1911 oil field made Electra, and the long, slow decline of that field has been unmaking it ever since. The 2020 census counted 2,292 residents, down 17, 8% from 2,791 in 2010. That is one of the steeper one-decade drops on this list, and it sits on top of an earlier decline that took the town down more than a quarter from its 2000 count. The houses that oilfield workers once filled change hands rarely, if at all. The median home value sits under $60,000. Under $60,000 sounds like opportunity until you run the logic forward. What brought the price that low is the same thing that will make selling difficult when you need to. A town losing nearly one resident in 5 per decade is a town where the buyer pool gets thinner every year, not thicker. Electra is close enough to Wichita Falls to keep a pulse, and the low prices are genuinely real. But buying a house in Electra is the easy part. It still calls itself the pump jack capital. The pump jacks are still there. The people aren't. Number 4, Hamlin. On the Jones and Fisher County line, about 45 miles northwest of Abilene. The numbers here are blunt and worth sitting with. The population peaked at 2,845 in 1990 and had fallen to 1,831 by 2020. 35% smaller in a single generation. That is not a trend line on a chart. That is every third house on every block. The farm and rail economy that kept Hamlin full shed jobs steadily as it modernized, and nothing came in behind it. Residential streets have what you might call missing teeth. Properties that were clearly lived in within living memory, now standing empty or gone to weeds. The gap between them and the occupied house next door, making the block look like something that got interrupted. Picture this. You are walking a block in Hamlin in the middle of a weekday. The house to your left has a car in the drive, curtains in the window, someone's life inside. The one across the street has a porch that is rotting off its frame and a yard that stopped being a yard 2 or 3 seasons ago. That is not a statistic. That is what a third of a town gone looks like from the sidewalk. Recent estimates hint that Hamlin may be close to a population floor, that the bleeding has slowed. That is not nothing. But a floor reached by losing a third of your neighbors is exhaustion, not a turnaround, and the empty houses that the decades of decline created do not refill just because the out-migration number levels off. 35% smaller than a generation ago. That's not a trend. That's the neighborhood. Up next, a county that posted one of the 6 steepest population drops of all 254 Texas counties in a single decade. And then number 1, where nearly 1 house in 3 sits vacant right now. Number 3, Presidio. Down on the border in the Big Bend, facing Ojinaga across the Rio Grande, 60 miles south of Marfa down a long stretch of desert highway. Remote in a way that shapes every fact about the place. The 2020 census counted 3,264 residents in Presidio itself, down from a 2007 peak of 4,805, more than a quarter of the town's people gone in 13 years. The wider county picture is starker. Presidio County dropped from 7,818 people in 2010 to 6,131 in 2020, a 6% collapse in a single decade, ranking among the 6 steepest losses of all 254 Texas counties. When an entire county empties that fast, individual houses stop being assets and become obligations passed between the few people still present. The workforce keeps leaving for Permian Basin wages, because 200 desert miles is a long commute to keep driving for a job that does not exist where you live. Median home values sit under $80,000. A property at that price in any functioning market would move. Here, the isolation that drives the price down is the same thing keeping buyers away. It is the same desert for the seller that it is for everyone else. The price is right. The distance isn't. Number 2, Sanderson. The Terrell County seat, out on US 90 in the far West Texas desert, the self-styled cactus capital. Locals will tell you it looks a little ghost towny, and the numbers do not argue. But before the numbers, there is a date, June 11th, 1965. After heavy rain to the west, a flash flood roared down Sanderson Canyon and straight through the town, killing 26 people and erasing homes and businesses in a single morning. Sanderson never fully recovered from that day, and the reasons to stay have drained away in the decades since. The population ran around 1,500 in 1980. The 2020 census found under 770. Estimates since have dropped towards 640. Terrell County as a whole, of which Sanderson is essentially the entire headcount, fell from 984 residents in 2010 to 760 in 2020, a 22. 8% drop that leaves it one of the least populated counties in the state. What few houses trade in Sanderson do so cheaply. The desert quiet here is real and not nothing. A person who wants distance from everything has found the right address. But a town this small and this isolated has almost no functioning real estate market. A home bought here is less an investment than a position, something you hold, with little expectation that the phone rings when you need out. One morning in 1965, the town has been answering for it ever since. Number 1, Spur, a Dickens County railroad town about 60 miles east of Lubbock, and every other place on this list is a prelude to what Spur's own census data shows. In 2020, of 547 total housing units in Spur, 39% stood vacant. Nearly 1 house in 3, empty. That is not an impression or a windshield survey. That is the official count, and the town's population data explains it. From 2010 to 2020, Spur fell from 1,318 residents to 863, a 34. 5% loss in a single decade, the steepest drop on this entire list. More than a third of the town's population gone in 10 years. By the time the census was taken, the houses that those residents left behind were simply still there because there was no one to move into them. What a town does when the market has stopped functioning entirely is what Spur did. It began selling abandoned lots off at roughly $500 a piece, 60 of them, land priced like a used appliance because the alternative was letting it sit until someone stopped maintaining it. Spur made national news with a program offering free land to tiny house dwellers willing to move in and build. Free land in Texas. That is the headline, and it is also the honest description of a market that has broken down past the point where any conventional pricing makes it move. Walk any block in Spur, and the vacancy is not a talking point. It is the house to your left, the lot across the street where a structure used to be, the unit at the end of the block with the windows gone dark long enough that the weeds have made their case permanent. This is what 39% vacant looks like at eye level. Not a statistic, a street. The free land offer and the $500 lots are real promises. The town was not advertising something it could not deliver. But those programs exist precisely because the market itself stopped delivering. A house you can practically be handed is not a screaming deal. It is a town showing you, plainly and without embarrassment, the clearest evidence that exists of a home nobody will buy. What made Spur this? The railroad town economics that built it stopped working, and there was no replacement. The farm economy around it mechanized. The young people made the sensible calculation and left for Lubbock. Each departure made the town slightly less viable for the person standing behind, which nudged the next calculation toward leaving, which made it slightly less viable again. That is how you get from a functioning town to 30% vacancy in a generation. It does not require a disaster. It only requires time and no reason strong enough to stay. $500. Free land. A third of the houses empty. That is not a deal. That is a town telling you everything. From Colorado City to Spur, the pattern holds. Texas grew, and these towns did not. And what gets left behind is a housing stock that outlasts the demand for it. The houses were built for populations that are not coming back. The prices are low because the market already knows that. Have you ever driven through a town where the empty houses outnumbered the lived-in ones? Tell us where and what it felt like in the comments. If this list made you look at the map differently, like the video and subscribe. We cover the Texas that does not make the relocation brochures, and there is a lot more of it to get through.